After living in Paul's house for 5 years, everyone assumed that Paul and I were a couple. After all, we had kissed and felt the warmth of each other's bodies. However, during the coming-of-age ceremony, Paul accepted the confession of the most popular girl at school. Later, someone asked him, "What about Helen?" Paul casually replied, "I had fun, but I found her pretty boring. Being friends is enough. I have someone else in mind to date." Silently, I changed my university application and chose the University of Hong Kong, the farthest from the northern city where we lived. Chapter 1. The admission letter from the University of Hong Kong arrived at the villa, and Paul's mother saw it when it was signed. She asked me, "You clearly applied to the university in Northern City with Paul, so why is your admission letter from HKU?" I knew I couldn't hide it, so I had to tell the truth. "Auntie, I changed my choice." "Because of Paul?" "No." I curved my lips into a slight smile and answered softly, "HKU has always been my dream. The professors there had already contacted me. After considering it, I felt HKU was the best choice for me." She remained silent for a long time. I thought she would be angry for changing my application without telling her that she would feel disappointed in me. But she simply patted my shoulder. "Helen, you've finally grown up. You're learning to make decisions for yourself." After my parents passed away, the Chin family took me in. Living under someone else's roof made me unconsciously seek the approval of Paul's family. It was like that with his parents, and even more so with Paul. Everyone knew I always did whatever Paul said. When we were kids, he got mad at me for talking to other boys at school and pushed me out of the door. He shouted, "You're not allowed back in my house." So I stayed outside the villa all night. No one expected me to suffer a tragedy in a gated community. To this day, I can't forget how that man reeking of alcohol covered my mouth and dragged me into the bushes, how he hit me, and how he violently tore off my clothes. After that, I understood I couldn't defy Paul. I didn't want to experience that same despair and helplessness in the darkness again. So, I became even more cautious with him. Over 5 years, that caution twisted and deformed into unconditional submission and obedience toward Paul. As my friend said, "You treat Paul like a king. Not even his housekeeper is as attentive as you." When it came time to fill out university applications, Paul said, "What should we do, Helen? Your score is so high, does that mean we'll have to separate?" Then he added, "I don't want to be far from you." I was wrong. I took his words as an indirect confession, so I followed him and applied to the university in Northern City. But on the night of the coming-of-age ceremony, when Olivia confessed her love to him, Paul glanced at me, raised an eyebrow, and accepted her confession. A friend who knew the truth spoke up for me and asked, "What about Helen?" The room fell into sudden silence. Paul looked at me and replied indifferently, "What am I supposed to do?" Then he said, "Helen and I will always be best friends." That night, I suddenly understood everything. I no longer wanted to stay in Northern City, and I definitely didn't want to be Paul's best friend. So that very night, without telling anyone, I changed my application and applied to the University of Hong Kong, the farthest from Northern City. "Auntie supports your decision to study at HKU," Paul's mother said with a smile. Hearing her support relieved the weight that had been pressing on my heart for days. I sniffled, holding back my emotions. Finally, I made a request. "Auntie, could you not tell Paul about my decision yet?" She understood my concern. "Paul is impulsive. I know you're worried that if he finds out, he'll make a scene and put everyone in an awkward situation. But Helen, you're leaving. Sooner or later, he'll find out." Chapter 2. After receiving my admission letter, I began preparing to go to Harbor City for my studies. While packing my things, I found an old photo of Paul and me. In the picture, Paul had pushed me in front of the camera. I smiled awkwardly, looking both shy and embarrassed. I was so absorbed in looking at the photo that I didn't notice when someone entered my room. Nor did I notice the hand that suddenly reached out behind me. It wasn't until Olivia snatched the frame from me that I reacted. "Is this a photo of you and Paul?" Olivia made no effort to hide her mockery. "Helen, you haven't changed much since childhood. You're still so ugly." She moved her lips without making a sound, but those words echoed louder than if she had said them aloud. Suppressing my shame and anger, I replied quietly, "Didn't your family teach you not to enter someone else's room without permission?" When I reached out to take back the frame, I turned my head and saw Paul standing at my door. He frowned as he looked at Olivia, his tone annoyed. "What are you doing in Helen's room? Get out of here." He hesitated for a moment before entering and forcibly pulling Olivia out. "Helen doesn't like people entering her room." Paul was so rough that Olivia stumbled back a few steps. When she finally steadied herself, she shot me a look and smiled mockingly. "Helen invited me in to look at her old photos with you." "Paul, you and Helen are really close with that." She handed the frame to Paul. I had to admit Olivia's ability to lie so naturally. "Olivia, did I invite you in?" "Helen, don't get me wrong. I don't mind how close you and Paul are." It's just before she could finish, Paul interrupted her. "Go wait for me in my room." Then he walked into my room and slammed the door shut. He looked at me reproachfully. "You shouldn't have shown her our photo." I hurried to defend myself. I was packing my things. She came in on her own. I never meant to show it to her. But Paul didn't believe me. He spoke as if he had already reached his own conclusion. "She's my girlfriend now, and you and I are just friends. We will always be just friends. Helen, stop doing pointless things." He threw the frame carelessly on the table. "If you like the photo, keep it. But don't let her see it again." "Helen, I don't want Olivia to feel bad because of this photo. And I don't want her to misunderstand our relationship because of it." For some reason, his words made me laugh. I knew that explaining was useless. So I simply took the photo frame, pulled out the photo, and tore it to pieces right in front of Paul. "Is this enough?" Paul stared at the torn pieces in the trash can, stunned for a moment. He frowned even deeper. "Helen, stop making a scene." "I'm not making a scene." I looked at him and spoke calmly. "You think this photo puts you in a difficult position, so I destroyed it in front of you. Now you don't have to worry about anyone seeing it." Outside the room, Olivia was banging on the door anxiously. "Paul, don't be mad at Helen because of me." She made such a fuss as if she wanted everyone to know that Paul and I had argued because of her. Even his mother came upstairs and asked, "Paul, what are you doing in Helen's room?" A sudden feeling of frustration surged within me, but I didn't know how to vent it. The only thing I could do was walk to the door and open it. As soon as Olivia saw me, she started apologizing frantically. "Helen, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." Before she could finish, Paul interrupted her again. "Why are you apologizing to her?" With that, Paul pushed me aside and took Olivia back to the room next door. I didn't want to worry Auntie, so I quickly made up an excuse. "Auntie, the school administration asked me to come today. I'm leaving now." It wasn't until I got into the taxi, heading to school, that I noticed a small cut on my finger. I must have hurt myself on the glass of the frame when I took out the photo. Thinking of the photo I had just destroyed, I suddenly felt a delayed wave of regret. That photo had been Paul's begged-for birthday gift for me. It wasn't as ugly as Olivia said, but it was quite ordinary. My insecurity about my appearance had always made me avoid cameras, and even more so photos with others. But Annie had given birth to an unfairly handsome Paul. That almost perfect face was enough to make any girl feel butterflies. I was no exception. But the first time I saw him, so dazzling, almost radiant, was the day the girls in my class cornered me in the bathroom to bully me. Paul suddenly broke in. He pulled me out of that dark, damp bathroom and took me into the sunlight. From that moment on, I could never see him without that golden filter. Chapter 3. When I arrived at school, the principal was still in a meeting. It was Lucas who took me to the office to wait for her. Of this academic genius adored by everyone, my only impression was that he always ranked first in the science division and was extremely popular among female students. "The principal will be here soon." That was all Lucas said before leaving. When he returned, he brought 2 bottles of mineral water and placed one in front of me. Along with the water, he also left a Band-Aid and a packet of iodine swabs. "Your finger is bleeding," Lucas reminded me. It was my right ring finger that was injured. While I cautiously tended to my wound, Lucas leaned on the desk watching my movements with quiet attention. When the principal entered, I had just finished putting on the Band-Aid. Lucas naturally picked up the trash from the table. Then, he handed the second bottle of water to the principal. She took a few sips before complaining about the meeting and finally got to the point. You should get to know each other. She pointed to me. Helen, the top humanities student this year. Then she pointed to Lucas. And this is Lucas, the top science student. What a coincidence. Both of you have chosen the University of Hong Kong. The principal was direct about the purpose of our meeting. Lucas, this afternoon you will take Helen to complete the necessary documents for studying in Hong Kong. Just as we were about to leave, the principal stopped me. She said, "Did you know the teachers were very upset with you before?" I paused for a moment before realizing she was referring to the class division issue. At that time, I had been absent from school due to illness. When I returned, I found out I had been placed in the humanities division. I asked Paul, "Was it you who filled out my preference form and put me in humanities?" "Yes." Paul's expression was indifferent. "I told you I chose humanities." That was the first time I spoke to him in an almost shouting tone. "Why did you make a decision for me without asking me? You didn't even tell me about the class division. Does it matter if it's humanities or science?" Paul remained completely calm. "Helen, I thought if I chose humanities, you would definitely choose humanities with me." After that argument, Paul locked himself in his room, refusing to eat or go to school. In the end, he won. For someone living under someone else's roof, no words are even necessary. Just the sigh of his father and the resigned look of his mother were enough to make me give in. But now I don't want to keep giving in. That's why I asked Annie to help me hide from Paul the fact that I had changed my application. Before leaving North City, I didn't want him to cause any unexpected trouble. The principal told me, "Back then, when I advised you to switch to the science class, you clearly agreed. But the next day, you told me you didn't want it anymore." "I'm sorry, Principal." I lowered my head in embarrassment. "Helen, you don't need to apologize to me. I just think it was a pity you gave up on physics and competitions because of it." The principal sighed but didn't dwell on the past. She patted me on the shoulder. "At least this time you didn't make an impulsive decision with your university application. Lucas is half from Port City. If you have any problems there, don't hesitate to look for him." Chapter 4. I didn't expect to run into Olivia and Paul right after leaving the office. Paul's gaze swept over me, landing briefly on Lucas, who stood beside me. He said nothing, but Olivia smiled mischievously and commented in a suggestive tone, "No wonder Helen didn't come to school with us. Turns out she had plans with someone else." I ignored her and prepared to leave with Lucas. But Paul suddenly called out to me, "I want to have wontons from the south side of the city for lunch. I don't remember the way take Olivia and me there." Olivia stuck out her tongue playfully. "Actually, I'm the one who wants to eat them." Suppressing my irritation, I replied softly, "I have things to do. You can use GPS." What could be so important? Paul narrowed his eyes impatiently. His gaze shifted again to Lucas before letting out a sudden laugh. "Helen, what could possibly be more important than me? Before, when I said I wanted those wontons, you walked alone through a snowstorm just to buy them for me." As soon as Paul finished speaking, Lucas glanced at his watch and said considerately, "Helen, if you're busy, we can reschedule." "No problem, give me a second." I smiled apologetically at Lucas. Then I lowered my head, unlocked my phone, and sent Paul the location. "I sent you the address. Just follow the GPS. You two are a couple, know it wouldn't be appropriate for me to go with you, right?" Before I could finish, Olivia suddenly interrupted me. "Helen, are you afraid we'll find out about that?" Her cryptic words left me bewildered. "What are you talking about?" I frowned and stared at Olivia. She smiled with hidden meaning, glancing at Lucas before continuing. "I mean, when you were a child and almost well, you know, but luckily the security guard saved you. That guard opened a wonton shop after retiring. You're afraid we'll find out, so you don't want to go with us, right? It's fine, Helen. You or the victim won't see you any differently." A chill ran through my entire body, starting from my chest. I froze in place. It took me a long time to react before I turned to Paul, incredulous. "Did you tell her?" Paul frowned, and avoided my gaze. Helen, you don't need to feel ashamed. Olivia's fake kindness was so obvious, but some people chose not to see it. I lowered my head, dug my nails into my palm, and desperately tried to contain the storm of emotions churning inside me. I didn't want to confront Paul here in front of everyone, demanding to know why he had told Olivia. I also didn't want to reveal more details and become gossip material. When I turned to leave, I heard Olivia ask, "Did I say something wrong?" Paul's voice was cold. He only replied, "Don't mind her." But in the end, Paul never took Olivia to eat those wontons she supposedly wanted so badly. The south side of the city was quite far from his house. If they had really gone, there was no way Paul would have gotten home before me. "You were out with Lucas for 2.5 hours. What did you do during that time?" As soon as he saw me, Paul started questioning me. I had no intention of answering him, but Paul clearly wasn't willing to let it go. He blocked my path and asked again, "What were you doing?" Suddenly, I realized how terrible he was as a person. After making sure we were alone in the house, I finally spoke softly. "Paul, why did you tell Olivia what happened to me when I was a child?" For a moment, he avoided my gaze, but soon regained his confidence. "Don't change the subject. What did you do with Lucas this afternoon?" Suddenly, I felt exhausted. "Paul, when you go out with Olivia, I never ask what you do together." Perhaps because he had gotten used to me always tolerating everything in silence, Paul couldn't handle even the slightest hint of resistance from me. He let out a sarcastic laugh and replied in a mocking tone, "Do you really think what you have with Lucas is the same as what I have with Olivia?" With that, his smile vanished instantly. He leaned in slightly, intimidatingly closing the distance between us until we were face to face. He stared at me and asked, "So now that I'm with Olivia, you're planning to be with Lucas? Are you pursuing him?" When Paul got angry, his temper was unpredictable, and every word became a sharp knife stabbing straight into the heart. "What a pity, Helen. Lucas isn't interested in girls like you." He smiled with overwhelming cruelty. "Helen, I thought if I chose humanities, you would definitely choose humanities with me." After that argument, Paul locked himself in his room, refusing to eat or go to school. In the end, he won. For someone living under someone else's roof, no words are even necessary. Just the sigh of his father and the resigned look of his mother were enough to make me give in. But now I don't want to keep giving in. That's why I asked Annie to help me hide from Paul the fact that I had changed my application. Before leaving North City, I didn't want him to cause any unexpected trouble. The principal told me, "Back then, when I advised you to switch to the science class, you clearly agreed. But the next day, you told me you didn't want it anymore." "I'm sorry, Principal." I lowered my head in embarrassment. "Helen, you don't need to apologize to me. I just think it was a pity you gave up on physics and competitions because of it." The principal sighed but didn't dwell on the past. She patted me on the shoulder. "At least this time you didn't make an impulsive decision with your university application. Lucas is half from Port City. If you have any problems there, don't hesitate to look for him." Chapter 4. I didn't expect to run into Olivia and Paul right after leaving the office. Paul's gaze swept over me, landing briefly on Lucas, who stood beside me. He said nothing, but Olivia smiled mischievously and commented in a suggestive tone, "No wonder Helen didn't come to school with us. Turns out she had plans with someone else." I ignored her and prepared to leave with Lucas. But Paul suddenly called out to me, "I want to have wontons from the south side of the city for lunch. I don't remember the way take Olivia and me there." Olivia stuck out her tongue playfully. "Actually, I'm the one who wants to eat them." Suppressing my irritation, I replied softly, "I have things to do. You can use GPS." What could be so important? Paul narrowed his eyes impatiently. His gaze shifted again to Lucas before letting out a sudden laugh. "Helen, what could possibly be more important than me? Before, when I said I wanted those wontons, you walked alone through a snowstorm just to buy them for me." As soon as Paul finished speaking, Lucas glanced at his watch and said considerately, "Helen, if you're busy, we can reschedule." "No problem, give me a second." I smiled apologetically at Lucas. Then I lowered my head, unlocked my phone, and sent Paul the location. I sent you the address. Just follow the GPS. You two are a couple, know it wouldn't be appropriate for me to go with you, right? Before I could finish, Olivia suddenly interrupted me. Helen, are you afraid we'll find out about that? Her cryptic words left me bewildered. What are you talking about? I frowned and stared at Olivia. She smiled with hidden meaning, glancing at Lucas before continuing. I mean, when you were a child and almost well, you know, but luckily the security guard saved you. That guard opened a wonton shop after retiring. You're afraid we'll find out, so you don't want to go with us, right? It's fine, Helen. You or the victim won't see you any differently. A chill ran through my entire body, starting from my chest. I froze in place. It took me a long time to react before I turned to Paul, incredulous. Did you tell her? Paul frowned and avoided my gaze. Helen, you don't need to feel ashamed. Olivia's fake kindness was so obvious, but some people chose not to see it. I lowered my head, dug my nails into my palm, and desperately tried to contain the storm of emotions churning inside me. I didn't want to confront Paul here in front of everyone, demanding to know why he had told Olivia. I also didn't want to reveal more details and become gossip material. When I turned to leave, I heard Olivia ask, "Did I say something wrong?" Paul's voice was cold. He only replied, "Don't mind her." But in the end, Paul never took Olivia to eat those wontons she supposedly wanted so badly. The south side of the city was quite far from his house. If they had really gone, there was no way Paul would have gotten home before me. You were out with Lucas for 2.5 hours. What did you do during that time? As soon as he saw me, Paul started questioning me. I had no intention of answering him, but Paul clearly wasn't willing to let it go. He blocked my path and asked again, "What were you doing?" Suddenly, I realized how terrible he was as a person. After making sure we were alone in the house, I finally spoke softly. "Paul, why did you tell Olivia what happened to me when I was a child?" For a moment, he avoided my gaze, but soon regained his confidence. "Don't change the subject. What did you do with Lucas this afternoon?" Suddenly, I felt exhausted. "Paul, when you go out with Olivia, I never ask what you do together." Perhaps because he had gotten used to me always tolerating everything in silence, Paul couldn't handle even the slightest hint of resistance from me. He let out a sarcastic laugh and replied in a mocking tone, "Do you really think what you have with Lucas is the same as what I have with Olivia?" With that, his smile vanished instantly. He leaned in slightly, intimidatingly closing the distance between us until we were face to face. He stared at me and asked, "So now that I'm with Olivia, you're planning to be with Lucas? Are you pursuing him?" When Paul got angry, his temper was unpredictable, and every word became a sharp knife stabbing straight into the heart. "What a pity, Helen. Lucas isn't interested in girls like you." He smiled with overwhelming cruelty. "Tell me, if Lucas knew what happened to you when you were a child, do you think he would still talk to you?" Maybe he realized he had said something he shouldn't have because he quickly added, "Did you know Olivia tried to date Lucas? He didn't even want her. Do you really think he'd look at you?" Wake up, Helen. For no apparent reason, I remembered that conversation between Paul and his friends that I had accidentally overheard that day. Chapter 5. That Paul accepted Olivia's confession at the coming-of-age ceremony surprised everyone. After all, our close friends had always assumed that he and I were a couple. I, too, had believed that I held a special place in his heart. Paul had a problem with cleanliness, yet he ate the leftovers from my plate. In our second year of high school, the girls started knitting scarves for the boys they liked. Paul knitted one for me. I used to get sick often, so he once carried me on his back all the way to the top of South Hill to pray for my health. Even the night before a ceremony, Paul drank too much at a party organized by his friends. On the way home, I looked up at the sky, staring at the bright, full moon, and he lowered his head, pressing his lips softly against mine. A fleeting touch, barely a whisper of contact. My heart pounded fiercely, and I couldn't sleep all night. His voice repeating my name echoed in my head. "Helen, Helen." I didn't understand why Paul had given me the illusion that he liked me, only to accept Olivia's confession right in front of me. Until one day, by chance, I overheard a conversation between him and his friends. Helen treats you so well. We all thought you two would end up together. Why did you suddenly accept Olivia's confession? Paul had been drinking that night. His voice sounded a bit sluggish. He answered bluntly, "It was fun. But in the end, she seemed pretty boring. Being friends is enough. I have someone else in mind if I want to date." His friends didn't seem to understand, so Paul continued, "Do you like eating apples? Helen is like an apple. Everything about her is fine, but she's too ordinary. When she's next to Olivia, the difference is too obvious. In that situation, any man would choose Olivia, don't you think?" Olivia had both beauty and figure. Everyone agreed she was the most attractive girl at school. Amid the noise and conversation, I turned my head and looked at my reflection in the mirror. For the first time, I felt completely disappointed in my own appearance. Paul looked at me, seeing my stunned expression, and repeated, "Helen, wake up already." I didn't say a word. I simply raised my hand and slapped him with all my strength. "Are you crazy?" Paul wore an expression of utter disbelief. "Helen, Lucas isn't interested in you. Why are you acting so crazy towards me?" I didn't even understand why I was so angry. After that, Paul and I gave each other the cold shoulder for a long time. I had been living in his house for 5 years, and although we had argued before, I always worried about avoiding awkward situations, especially about his uncle and aunt noticing something wrong between us. Normally, I would never let more than a day pass before being the one to give in and seek reconciliation with Paul. Paul thought this time would be no different, that when I felt uncomfortable, I would come back to him and apologize. He waited.
A day.
Then another.
A week.
Then another. And I did not react at all. It wasn't until university was about to begin that Paul, for the first time since our fight, decided to speak to me. "Helen, I think I have a fever." He took my hand and placed it on his forehead. I pulled away immediately. "If you're sick, take medicine." Just as I was about to go to my room, Paul grabbed me again. "Are you planning to ignore me forever? Helen, you're really cruel. Before, when I got sick, you worried about me more than my own mother. And now the only thing you can say is take medicine." Paul had always been good at slapping me and then offering me candy. Seeing I still didn't respond, he finally said, "That day, I only said those things out of anger. I just wanted to stop Lucas from tricking you. You've been busy studying, so you don't know how many girls at school are chasing Lucas. He never pays attention to any of them's a womanizer. Besides, everyone knows Lucas got into Hong Kong University and you're going to City University. Even if you managed to win him over, do you really think you could maintain a long-distance relationship?" After saying that, Paul seemed to realize something. "No way." With a firm and determined voice, he said, "Helen, someone like Lucas would never accept being with you. He just thinks you're naive and easy to fool. He's just playing with you. I know you're mad at me because of Olivia. Helen, even if I'm with Olivia, you'll always be my best friend." I interrupted him coldly. "I don't want to be your friend. Paul, I don't have a heart cold enough to stay friends with someone I've kissed and shared something ambiguous with." As soon as I said those words, Paul seemed frozen. He looked at me with his lips slightly parted, as if he wanted to say something. It was the first time I showed my complete honesty in front of Paul. I must admit, deep down, I still held on to a tiny bit of hope. But that hope was like the sunset outside the window, and in the moment the last glimmer of light disappeared completely, I let out a sigh of relief. Then, without saying anything else, I turned and went upstairs. Chapter 6. After returning to my room, I organized the documents necessary for my move to Hong Kong. It wasn't until I realized I had left my phone downstairs that I came out of my room. Just as I was about to go down, I saw Paul standing there, still holding my phone. Upon hearing the door open, he looked up at me. His expression was hard to read, and his tone was laced with barely contained frustration, almost gritting his teeth as he spoke. "HKU starts on the 1st. Why are you going to Hong Kong on that day?" I wasn't sure what upset me more, the fact that he had gone through my phone without permission, or the fear that he had discovered I had changed my university application. My heart pounded as I quickly stepped forward to snatch my phone back, but Paul dodged with ease. We both knew each other's passwords. At that moment, the screen showed my flight information. Paul stared at it and asked again, "Why are you going to Hong Kong?" I pressed my lips together in silence. Then I heard him continue coldly, "Don't tell me you're going there just to say goodbye to Lucas." His words eased my tense heart a little.
No.
I had barely said that when a notification popped up on my screen again, lighting it up. It was a message from Lucas. "You forgot something in my car. I can bring it to you now." Attached was a photo of the small keychain I always hung on my bag. Paul's expression, which seemed to have relaxed a little, visibly tensed up again. "Did you go out with him this afternoon?" "It's none of your business." I reached out again to take my phone. "Give it back." But once again, he dodged easily. Paul looked at me and suddenly let out a cold laugh. Right in front of me, he replied to Lucas. "Okay." Then with a mocking smile, he added, "If you don't want to tell me, I'll just ask him directly." He had always been like this, possessive, domineering. I was caught between anxiety and anger, but there was nothing I could do against his strength. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Paul shot me a sarcastic look before turning to answer the door. It was Olivia. "Why didn't you pick up your phone? Did you forget about tonight's class reunion?" She turned and smiled when she saw me. "Helen, why don't you come with us?" I had never been fond of group gatherings and preferred to keep my distance. Olivia seemed to know I was about to decline. She clung sweetly to Paul's arm, swaying it gently. "Paul, tell Helen to come with us, okay?" Paul hugged her and glanced at me, giving a command. "Come with us. I'll give you your phone back when you get in the car." With that, he left with Olivia. I had no choice but to follow them. When he saw me getting into the car, Paul smiled smugly and tossed my phone at me like he was doing me a favor. The message he had sent earlier couldn't be unsent. The only thing I could do was edit my explanation. Something came up suddenly, so I had to go out. "I'll pick it up tomorrow." I waited a long time, but Lucas never replied. "Helen, stop looking at your phone." Olivia's voice suddenly sounded beside me. "Come play with us." She and a few girls were playing Truth or Dare. "You girls go ahead," I declined. But just as I said that, Olivia accidentally knocked over the glass in front of me. Even though I reacted quickly and tried to dodge, my dress still got stained. "Oh no, Helen, I'm so sorry. I'm so clumsy," Olivia apologized. But the smile on her face was too intentional, tinged with barely concealed provocation. I felt something was off, but in the end, I chose to remain silent. I quietly stood up and left the private dining room. While I was rinsing the stain from my dress in the bathroom, I overheard someone mentioning my name. "Who doesn't know Helen's in love with you? She bought a ticket to Hong Kong and made sure you saw it clearly. She's just using Lucas to provoke you." The person speaking was one of Paul's closest friends. Paul had been restless all night, but at that moment, as if finally convinced, he let out a sigh of relief. Leaning against the wall, his sharp features stood out under the warm golden light. "These little games are so boring," his friend teased. "She's doing it because she likes you." Paul let out a mocking laugh. "A lot of people are in love with me." I lowered my gaze, pretending I hadn't heard anything, and continued calmly scrubbing the stain on my dress. Just as I stepped out of the bathroom, I saw a message from Lucas. My phone died. I just turned it on. "Are you at Hingshin? I heard your class is having a reunion there tonight. Wait for me, I'm on my way." The message had been sent 10 minutes ago. I replied, "Okay, I'll wait for you at the entrance." Right after I pressed send, I looked up and saw Olivia approaching with a sweet smile. "Helen." She said my name softly, then sat down next to me with the confidence of someone who thought they were in control. "When you saw Paul and me kissing in the car, how did it feel?" Olivia looked at me with a malicious smile. Seeing I didn't respond, she let out a light laugh. "Everyone knows you like Paul, but what a pity Paul can't stand ugly girls. He said kissing an ugly girl would give him nightmares." If this had been before, her words probably would have hurt me or made me furious. But now, I just looked at her calmly. "Oh, really? Olivia, ever since you and Paul got together, I haven't done anything to interfere with your relationship. So you have no reason to keep picking on me. Besides, I stopped liking him a long time ago. Just after I spoke, I saw Lucas arrive. I stood up and walked toward him. Lucas pulled something from his pocket and handed it to me. It seemed important to you, so I wanted to return it as soon as possible. I took it and thanked him softly. That little keychain had been a gift from Paul years ago, with a protective charm inside that he had personally asked for me. I had carried it with me ever since, never once letting it go. It looked so old. Olivia appeared again. Seemingly out of nowhere, I noticed she was holding a glass of juice in her hand and instantly became alert. Sure enough, a second later the juice flew in my direction. Luckily, Lucas reacted in time and pulled me aside. But the keychain, once a soft pale pink and white, was now stained a vivid orange, dripping with liquid. I stood frozen in place. Lucas shot Olivia a cold glare and said sharply, "If you can't hold a glass properly, maybe you should go to the hospital and have your hands amputated." Then, unfazed, he handed me some napkins to dry my hands. "The keychain will need to be washed." I looked down at the ruined plush in my hands, saying nothing. As before, Olivia apologized again with that fake sweet tone. "Helen, I'm really just so clumsy." She had been clumsy far too many times. I lifted my head to look at her and suddenly smiled, accepting her apology with kindness. "It's all right." With that, I walked over to the counter, picked up an entire jug of orange juice, and poured it directly over Olivia. "Oh, I'm sorry, that was an accident too. Olivia, you won't be mad about this, right?" I had always been known for my good temper. Olivia never expected me to retaliate so directly. She stood frozen for a few seconds before bursting into tears and screaming. More and more people gathered to see what had happened. When she saw Paul, Olivia ran toward him crying and complaining. It was Helen and Lucas. How could Helen team up with someone from another class to bully me? Paul only gave her a brief glance before turning his gaze to Lucas and me. "Apologize," he said coldly, his eyes filled with anger. But Lucas and I simply ignored him. Lucas picked up a clean towel from a nearby waiter. "Give me the plush, let me clean it a bit." I shook my head. "No need. It's not important." After saying that, I threw the plush into the trash can in front of everyone. "Sorry for making you come all the way here." Lucas smiled indifferently. "I only brought it because it was yours." At the time, I didn't think too much about the meaning behind his words. Being ignored only made Paul angrier. "Helen, if you don't apologize, don't even think about coming home." It was the second time I had heard him say those words. Growing up, Paul must have realized how sensitive I was because he had stopped using threats like forbidding me to return home. But now, because of Olivia, he didn't care at all about how I felt. It didn't matter. I would be leaving for Hong Kong soon anyway. I looked at Paul, and then back at Olivia. Then I curved my lips into a smile and mimicked her tone from when she had once apologized to me. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Olivia. I didn't mean to." "Of course you did it on purpose." Olivia shouted furiously. But who cared about her? I turned to Paul. "I've apologized."
Can I leave now?
Paul didn't answer, so I took his silence as a yes. Just as I was about to leave, Lucas suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Wait a moment." Then, under everyone's gaze, he walked to the bar, took another glass of juice, and poured it right at Olivia's feet. "Oops, how clumsy of me," he said with complete calm. Then he left his phone number. "If you need compensation, contact me." I knew he did it to ease some of the burden off me. Paul would never allow Olivia to be humiliated. And, as expected, he tried to punch Lucas, but Lucas dodged with ease. Hands in his pockets, he looked at Paul and said indifferently, "Less green tea, more dignity." Then he left with me. On the way home, I told Lucas, "I'm changing my ticket. I'll leave for Port City sooner." Lucas didn't ask why. He simply replied, "All right, I'll go with you." Then he asked, "When do you want to leave?" I looked out the window at the neon lights, taking in the city where I had grown up. I answered, "Tomorrow." Curiously, after we left, no one seemed to care about Olivia's humiliation. Instead, everyone was gossiping about Lucas and me. Are they together? Lucas definitely helped Helen. I heard they've been seen together all summer. How cute. With each comment, Paul's expression grew darker. One of his friends quickly said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Helen's going to University C, and Lucas is going to the University of Hong Kong. They can't be together." Someone else retorted, "Long-distance love isn't illegal, you know." Paul's friend insisted in frustration, "That's impossible." Then a girl suddenly said, "Didn't you know Helen applied to the University of Hong Kong?" The place fell into complete silence. Paul was the first to react. Connecting the dots with Helen's recent strange behavior, he felt a knot tightening in his chest. He immediately stepped forward and grabbed the girl by the wrist, demanding, "Who told you Helen applied to the University of Hong Kong?" The girl hesitated for a long time before admitting she had made it up. Scared by Paul's expression, she still defended Helen. "You knew Helen wanted to apply to the University of Hong Kong, but you forced her to stay in North City with you. Didn't you notice how often Olivia bullied her?" Paul barely heard another word after that. He only relaxed when he confirmed that Helen wasn't really going to Port City. The class reunion ended in chaos, leaving only a few close friends behind. Paul booked another private room. Leaning back on the sofa, his gaze unconsciously fell on the fruit plate on the table. Most of the fruit had been eaten, leaving only a single apple. Suddenly Paul thought of Helen. He had always seen her as an apple. Rigid, simple, boring. But the more he thought about it, the more he recalled the image of Helen standing next to Lucas. An inexplicable anger began burning inside him. Just then Olivia entered after changing her clothes. The moment she stepped through the door, she noticed Paul's expression wasn't as usual. She sat beside him and nestled into his arms naturally. Thinking Paul was still upset because Helen had humiliated her, she whispered sweetly, "Don't be mad anymore, Paul. Maybe Helen just has some misunderstanding with me." But Paul remained silent, staring fixedly at the fruit tray. Seeing his indifference, Olivia called the waiter and ordered another one. She picked up a piece of cherimoya and brought it to his lips, but Paul dodged her hand. Instead, he reached out and picked up a whole, untouched apple. Olivia pouted, complaining in a spoiled tone. "What's so special about an apple? You don't like apples either?" Paul's sudden and seemingly senseless question didn't strike Olivia as strange, so she simply replied without thinking, "Who even likes apples?" Paul said nothing more. He remained silent for a long time, lost in thought. No one knew what was going through his mind. It wasn't until Olivia ran out of the room in tears that the others stopped what they were doing and asked, "What's wrong with her?" Paul remained in the same relaxed posture, half reclined on the sofa. One side of his face was hidden in shadow, making his features appear even sharper. "We're over." His friends were stunned. They gathered around him, demanding an explanation. But everything seemed fine. Why break up all of a sudden? Paul just shrugged. Truthfully, he didn't even know why he had suddenly said they should break up. But at that moment, he felt absolutely nothing. Not the slightest hint of sadness. Instead, one thought crossed his mind. If Helen finds out I broke up with Olivia, surely she'll be happy, right? At that thought, he let out an inexplicable laugh. Suddenly, he felt a strong urge to see Helen. But he had already promised his friends they would celebrate all night. So he thought, "I'll tell her tomorrow." When I arrived at the villa, Paul's mother was home. I told her about my plan to leave for Port City earlier than expected. She didn't say much, just helped me pack my things. Before I left for the airport, she gave me a card. "Take good care of yourself in Port City. I know Paul's been troubling you." Her voice suddenly broke, and tears began to fall. "Helen, I'm so sorry." I quickly comforted her. "Auntie, you haven't done anything wrong. I'll always be grateful to you." When she dropped me off at home, she said she would treat me as her own daughter from now on. In the years I lived in their home, she truly had. If it hadn't been for Paul, I think we could have had a real mother-daughter relationship. That very night after landing in Port City, I received a call from Paul. I didn't answer, and he kept calling several times. In the end, I had to block his number. Soon after, he sent a message on WeChat. Where are you? I briefly explained the situation about changing my application. Then Paul sent a string of messages. I didn't read or reply. I removed him from my pinned contacts and set his messages to Do Not Disturb. After thinking for a moment, I decided to delete him as a friend. But I had underestimated Paul's obsession. On the day the semester started at the University of Hong Kong, his mother called to say Paul had disappeared. Before she could finish speaking, I looked up and saw a familiar figure standing at the university entrance. As Paul rushed toward me, Lucas pulled me back and kept me safe. Paul tried to reach me, but Lucas swiftly pushed his hand away. Clearly impatient, Lucas said, "Bro, a little civility, please. Talk if you want, but keep your hands to yourself." The anger Paul had been bottling up for so long finally exploded at that moment. He grabbed Lucas by the collar and spoke harshly. "What does this have to do with you and me?" As the tension between them was about to erupt, I stepped in just in time to stop it. "That's enough. Paul, today's the first day of classes at HKU. You suddenly disappeared, turned off your phone, and everyone's been looking for you. Your mom is really worried about you too." Paul stared at me for a long while before finally saying, "Do you know how I felt, Helen, when you suddenly vanished and wouldn't answer my calls?" He let go of Lucas and surprisingly calmed down. "Helen, why did you lie to me?" He emphasized the word lie. I took a deep breath and replied softly, "If I hadn't, you would have found 1,000 ways to make me stay in North City." Paul curled his lips, almost forming a mocking smile. "Helen, don't make me seem so despicable." I answered, "But that's exactly how you've been. You were like that when you made me cut ties with my male friends, and again during the class division." Paul seemed lost in thought. Those things had truly happened, and he suddenly seemed to realize something. After a moment of silence, Paul spoke. "I just didn't want to be separated from you." He always liked to use this excuse to justify his lack of respect and his need to control me. I smiled faintly. But there were better solutions. "Paul, you can't keep pushing me and expect me to always give in." I saw how his eyes suddenly turned red. Paul knew perfectly well why I had secretly changed my application and why I had left North City, without saying a word. But he had always been good at deceiving himself, always blaming others for his own mistakes. All of a sudden, he pointed at Lucas and asked me, "Helen, have you fallen in love with him? If not, then why did you come to HKU with him?" I knew it wasn't worth saying anything more. I simply advised him, "Go back to North City. Your mom already arranged for you to take a leave from school. It's not too late to return now." When we entered the campus, Paul stubbornly followed me. He wasn't willing to accept it. "Unless you come with me." But he was stopped by security at the school gates. "Sir, visitors who aren't students need an appointment to enter." After that, Paul blocked me outside the campus for several days until his parents came to Hong Kong and took him back. During the winter vacation of my first year, I applied to stay on campus. When Annie heard, she didn't say much. She understood why I didn't want to return to North City. Before the year ended, I used the money I earned from my part-time job to buy some souvenirs from Hong Kong and sent them to North City. After Auntie received the package, she called me. We chatted for a while, and towards the end, she mentioned that Paul hadn't gone to HKU. He said he wants to repeat the year and try again to get into HKU to be with you. Your uncle and I tried to persuade him, but we couldn't change his mind. We had no choice but to let him do what he wants. Auntie continued, "During New Year's, all your roommates are going home. Don't you feel lonely being alone?" I smiled. "I have a friend from Hong Kong. He invited me to spend New Year's with his family." "Is it Lucas?" "I've heard about him." "Yes." Not wanting her to worry, I lied. Lucas had indeed invited me to spend New Year's at his home, but I had declined. Luckily, some restaurants in Hong Kong stay open on New Year's Eve. After dinner, Lucas called to ask if I had time. There was a lot of noise on his end, and I couldn't hear what he said. After a moment, the noise quieted. "Sorry, there are little kids at home. It's very noisy." I smiled and assured him, "It's fine. What did you say earlier?" "I didn't catch it." He replied, Do you want to go to Victoria Harbor to watch the fireworks? Don't you need to be with your family? It seemed like Lucas was also smiling. They don't need me. I spent my first New Year's Eve in Hong Kong with Lucas. When the New Year's bells rang and the fireworks lit up the sky, Lucas looked down at me and said, "Helen, Happy New Year." I replied, "Lucas, Happy New Year." The next time I saw Paul was the following summer. I heard he had failed the college entrance exam and that his father had already arranged for him to study abroad. Before leaving, he came to Hong Kong to visit me. Only a year had passed, but I barely recognized him. Paul had lost a lot of weight, and his carefree, confident expression was gone. He had changed so much that he no longer resembled the Paul the first remembered. We met in a private restaurant. The atmosphere was quiet, and the silence between us didn't feel as awkward as it might have. When the steamed egg arrived, Paul moved the dish in front of me. "You've always liked steamed eggs since you were little." He scooped a spoonful and put it in my bowl. When he saw I wasn't eating, he asked, "Why aren't you eating it?" I smiled and said, "I haven't liked it for a long time." That sentence froze the air that had just begun to stir again. A long time passed, long enough for the food on the table to go cold, before Paul spoke again. He said, "I broke up with Olivia." "I know." Paul seemed surprised. He smiled bitterly and muttered, "So you knew. And do you know that the person I've always liked is you?" Paul's sudden confession stunned me for a moment, but I quickly composed myself and pretended not to have heard. I already knew he liked me. Paul liked me, but couldn't accept liking someone as ordinary as me. So when others said we were soulmates and made the perfect couple, Paul always refuted it. He repeatedly emphasized that he only saw me as a sister. I also knew that on the day of his coming-of-age ceremony, he knew I would confess, so he accepted Olivia in front of me. He told his friends he didn't want to lose me as a good friend. "Helen, do you think we can never go back to how we were?" I didn't answer Paul's question because, at that moment, Lucas sent me a message. "I bought the refreshing drink you like." Attached was a photo of the drink he had picked up. Lucas knew I was meeting Paul today and was waiting outside at that very moment. Suddenly, I didn't want to keep him waiting. I wanted to see him right away and drink the refreshing drink he bought me. "Paul, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now." Paul glanced at my phone and asked, "Is it Lucas?" I nodded, then thought for a moment and added, "He's my boyfriend now." As I left, Paul asked me, "Why do you like Lucas?" Almost instinctively, I thought of that moment when I asked Lucas, "Do you like apples?" "If you like apples too, I'd be happy to share one with you." Without hesitation, Lucas answered, "Yes." He added, "Apples are the king of fruits. They're rich in nutrients and so accessible. Apples are the best fruit in the world."